And again, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. And so just a couple of administrative items before we dive in. Generally on these calls, we ask that you do turn off your cameras unless you are speaking. But if you are looking to ask a question or looking to share a piece of information or a piece of feedback, please feel free. You can open up your camera and we want to see your face as you speak. And then don't forget to turn it back off when you are done. So I'm gonna put a quick little reminder in the chat just to remind folks who are still joining us. And we will dive right in. So thanks again. Reminders to turn off your camera if you have not. And welcome everybody. So as you likely know, I am Laura Malakoff. I am from ICF, and I am I lead the team that is your TA providers for your Jobs Plus grant for reporting. It's been great to be able to work with you all over the last quite a few months, over the last couple of quarters as you've collected your data. And we're excited to offer some TA office hours, a TA learning experience today so that you can better collect your data, better understand your data, and better apply it to the work that you're doing. So again, if you are joining us from one of the PHAs, one of the Jobs Plus grantees, please enter your name and your role and your cohort in the chat so we know who you are, and we're happy to have all of you. Others from my team who you may have worked with are Allie Payton, Nitan Shanis, and Catherine Au, as well as Danielle Shiralus, who you will hear from a little bit later. And of course, thank you to the HUD Jobs Plus team, Lee Van Rye and Isaac Dozier. Thanks for being here and working with us. So with that, we'll dive right in. Our agenda today is we'll get just some brief words from HUD. We will spend some time looking at your Q2 2023 data, or your data from the beginning through Q2 2022. Thank you everybody for getting your data submitted and responding to our request to QC and clean up the data. We're also really excited to bring you a whole panel of experts to talk with you about youth and young adult career pathways. We really are excited to be able to share that information, and we hope it's really useful to you. And we'll have some opportunity for Q&A as well with them. So welcome to our guests. You'll hear from each of them a little bit later. Excuse me. We will also do a refresher of the JPEID tool. This will be a quick refresher, but hopefully it'll just get your minds jogged about using that tool and some of the key things to keep in mind. And then we'll have a bit of a discussion about feedback about how data collection and reporting TA is going. So we'll look forward to hearing from you on that. So now let me turn it over to Lee, and she will just say a few words before we dive in.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Hi, everyone. Lee Van Rye, one of the program leads for Jobs Plus here at HUD, along with Isaac. We, first of all, just wanted to thank the whole group for taking time out of your schedule. We know you all are very busy every day and really appreciate you, setting aside this time to be with us for these quarterly calls. As we've said before, we really indeed want to make data our center resource that drives the programs on the local level, and we think this will really help us continue to do that. And so we also really appreciate ICF's support in this effort. We really look forward to having these ongoing opportunities to really look at the data together and do peer exchange around the data and really help feed that back into the work that you all are doing. We also wanted to just thank you all for the work you've been doing on gathering up and submitting the FY22 operating fund information. As you all likely know, this is gathering up your agency's FY22 disregard information so that we can give it to our colleagues here at HUD as they calculate the FY24 operating fund. Obviously very important to every agency. So thank you for all that close work on that effort. And then lastly, just also want to recognize, we know you all are working on gathering and submitting the Q3 quarterly data. So through this last September, and submitting that at the end of the month by October 31st. So again, just appreciate all the work on that to really keep that quarterly data process going. And with that, I will just turn it back over to Laura for the rest of the presentation.
All right, thank you, Lee. And next up, we are going to take a look at your data through Q2 2023. So just a couple of quick reminders about what the Tableau dashboard is, which is what we're going to look at. This is the official data system and record of your data. Remember that the survey tool is just simply a means to submit your data to be QC'd. A reminder that Tableau is a way for you to visualize and see and understand and interact with your data. And really, this is just a tool for you to understand what your data that you're collecting and submitting actually means. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allie Payton, who is, many of you have met through your work accessing TA from our team, and she is going to walk us through some of the data, and we'll zoom in on a couple of places where we want to make some observations and learn more.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate the intro. To start, I think I'm going to share my screen. So let me just try to see if I can take over screen share. Right, looks good. And just a heads up, I'm going to be looking at you all right here, but then I have all of the data over here. So if I'm switching views, I'm not ignoring you all. I'm just making sure I know what I'm talking about.
And Allie, before we move forward, I might ask, is it possible to zoom in just a little bit?
I can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, my screen is like a very odd size. I don't know why. So yes, Laura just, does the Zoom look okay also? So I'm gonna go with yes. As Laura just mentioned, so we have Tableau sort of as a resource for y'all to use to review the data that you submit through the surveys. There's a newer method of accessing it, which I think most of you are aware of, but again, it's the link that we email out every quarter once we've completed the QC and importing of your data. We did a sort of step-by-step walkthrough of how to access that data in our last office hours call. So if you need to access that, that is on HUD Exchange. And again, as we mentioned on our last call, but just to kind of reiterate, if anyone wasn't there, we've made some modifications and updates to many of the sheets and some of the graphs just to sort of make them easier to interpret or easier to use for you all as users. But we are, continuing to try and make improvements, keep an eye out for additional anomalies, and QC your data really closely. So if you are reviewing the Tableau dashboards and you have any questions about the data that you see or what's in the graphs, anything like that, feel free to reach out to myself, Catherine, or Laura, your TA providers. Let us know what you're seeing. Let us know the questions you might have, and I will work on addressing them. And also we appreciate it. If you have already reached out, it's very helpful to, sort of hear feedback. It's great for being able to implement and actually do something about it. I'm really quickly going to just review what's available to you on these dashboards again. You've got a dashboard navigation page, and in here you have 7 different types of views. The views that are most useful for grantees are going to be your individual site graphs, individual site tables, and then KMI for individual sites. So these 3 right over here. And then the other views that you also have access to that are helpful for comparison and kind of seeing how things are going are the snapshot view for HUD, the comparison tables and graphs, and then the KMI cross-cutting displays right here. For today, we're going to sort of zoom in on these comparison graphs. And cohort 7, we're kind of calling you all out. So I hope you all don't mind your data being reviewed by the group a little bit. And because we have some wonderful speakers coming once later on in the call to discuss youth programs with you all, we're going to review some youth data information, see how you could sort of use the dashboards to see how your PHA is doing with engaging your youth population, and see what sort of tools you might be able to implement from the speakers that we'll have later on. We've selected a couple of places within the data within these dashboards to look at specifically that are specifically related to youth metrics. And we kind of hope that overall you'll be able to pair these data visualizations with your knowledge of your program and your public housing authority, and find some areas of improvement, hopefully find them useful. So for today, we're looking at the comparison graphs, which they're not super intuitive at first glance, but can be kind of helpful once you know how to use them. So I'm going to kind of walk through that a little bit. The whole idea here is to be able to kind of compare between different grantees, and so compare yourself to the performance of the rest of your cohort or something like that. And then use that to be able to see change over time. So these dashboards can be filtered both by quarter and by year by using these filters. And so you can navigate through and view change over time by changing those filters. A key thing to note with these comparison graphs specifically is that they display both the total count per quarter, as well as unduplicated totals for each indicator. So there's sort of some comparison that kind of needs to be done between each column that you can view in these graphs. And then another. Does someone have a question?
So here's your email.
Okay.
You make it.
I'm going to keep going. So another point that I kind of want to be clear about is that within these graphs, the thing that you're comparing to is also a column in these graphs. So for the youth example, you would want to kind of take a look at the youth population graph, which is chart, which is all the way over to the right here, and then compare this total to the counts that are found in all of the graphs to the left. So this youth population count is going to be the total count of youth that you reported for, your PHA reported for that quarter. That count represents all youth in the development generally. So yeah, so we're going to focus in on the unduplicated totals for cohort 7 from quarter 2 of 2022, which was one of that cohort's first quarters of reporting. And then skip a year ahead and look at their most recent quarter of reporting and see, if there's been any changes, any improvements. Generally, you're hoping that over time, there's an increase in the unduplicated total fields. So you can see here, you've got the second column, the fourth column, the sixth column, and the eighth column with unduplicated total fields. And you're just hoping to see a sort of increase in the totals represented here as your team is able to engage the youth population in your developments. Growing youth financial literacy, engaging youth in extracurricular programming, and just generally increasing youth financial empowerment overall. The way that you'll be able to view change over time in these graphs is that the bar literally grows taller, especially in comparison to the ninth bar to the right that shows you the total youth in the development. So as you can see right now, cohort 7 for their first quarter of reporting, which was quarter 2 of 2022, has reported, some employed youth in there, and some, a couple of youth who are enrolled in extracurricular activities, some enrolled in job training, and then some who are generally financially empowered for their very first quarter of reporting. And that's great. It's a great baseline to start with. And then when you skip ahead year, so you're going from quarter 2 of 2022 to quarter 2 of 2023 by using those filters, you can see that while the youth population counts remain pretty close to the same, those sort of things that'll slightly change over time, just as some of the youth kind of grow up and aren't youth anymore, and then, more youth join that cohort. You can see, though, that unduplicated totals have really increased over the last year for cohort 7, which is fantastic, especially under this financially empowered indicator. Many of the cohort 7 grantees are reporting that significantly more youth that are feeling financially empowered. You've even got Goldsboro reporting that most of the youth in population in their developments are feeling financially empowered, which is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, so that's kind of a idea of how to check that out with the change over time. You can see the growth in these bar charts under the unduplicated totals by sort of switching the time. And yeah, it kind of represents growth and improvements in the program overall. I know this is like a little bit, complicated, and it's not the most intuitive graph to view from like get-go. So I hope this kind of can help y'all interpret these comparison graphs. And then just for a second example, I'm going to quickly change the indicator. We'll still look at cohort 7's data and the sort of change over time from their first quarter of reporting to now. But I want to show another example in hopes that this will help y'all kind of understand a little bit better. So the next area we're going to look at education. I think it's still sort of relevant to the sort of youth topic that we're running with for this office hours session. And if you are looking at these graphs similarly to the youth graphs and similarly with all of the indicators that you can view on the comparison graphs, everything over to the right side is sort of your reference point for the number of individuals who might be eligible, like the total pool of individuals who might have, their whatever it is improved by one of the programs or services that we're talking about in all of the data in the graphs to the left. So in this case, the need identified section on the right is your reference point. You have counts of folks in developments who are identified as needing a college degree program and then needing high school equivalency services. And in this case, because there's sort of different types of programs in this one graph, you would want to compare columns 1 and 2, which are high school equivalency data, 5 and 6, which are also high school equivalency data, to the column 10, which is the high school equivalency population total. And then similarly, you would want to be looking at columns 3 and 4, which are college degree related graphs, and then columns 7 and 8, which are also college degree related graphs, to column 9, which is your total population. It's your reference point for those who have a need identified for a college degree program. And so we're looking right now at quarter 2 of 2022 for cohort 7. So this is their first quarter of reporting. Again, they've identified a need for a number of participants within their programs, and some sort of implementation of services has started to happen, as you can see in these graphs over here. And then if we switch it back to 2023, so we're moving a year ahead in the data, you can see that while there are still, participant pools with folks who have a need identified who could use these services, a ton more services have started to be implemented. A ton more individuals have started to take advantage of the services offered. So that's fantastic growth to see. And yeah, you can, again, this is also something that you could compare grantee by grantee. So checking out sort of the comparison in the height of each bar to these total bars. And yeah, I think that's about everything I have on these graphs. I hope that sort of helps y'all interpret these graphs a little bit better. I know that they're not the most intuitive or user-friendly, but we're hoping that they can be useful as we talk about sort of different indicators and service provision for folks living in your developments. And with that, I think that's everything from me, unless there are immediate questions or any feedback that you wanted to throw in too, Laura. And yeah, that's everything. I'll stop the screen share so you can put the slides back up.
All right. Well, thank you, Allie. Appreciate that. And again, just to reiterate what Allie said, our goal here is to, give you the tools to be able to take a look at your data, see what you can learn from it, look at places where you may need to make program improvements, places where your program is doing great, and being able to tell those stories as well. So just another way to show you what you can do with the Tableau dashboards. As Allie mentioned, there are many, many different views and many different ways to look at the data. So if you do have any questions about what might make sense for your own grant, or if you just want to kind of take a look and dig into your grant specific data with us, you can feel free to reach out. So now we are going to hopefully tie it all together. So we looked at some of the youth and education related metrics. I know you're collecting quite a bit of data on those topics. And so we are going to move over to our learning exchange, where you will get to hear some expert information about youth and young adult career pathways and opportunities. So, we're really happy to be able to bring ICF's Workforce Innovation and Poverty Solutions staff on board to really connect the dots and tie things together, and really help identify trends in the data and give you some resources and tools for your projects. So I know many of you have already met my colleague Danielle. She has put together a panel of experts today that we're really, really looking forward to hearing from on the topic of youth and young adult career pathways. Before we dive in, I'm going to turn it over to Lee for some introductory remarks.
Great. Thank you, Laura. We just wanted to take a moment from the HUD perspective to sort of talk a little bit about kind of why the topic today. As you all know, as Jobs Plus grantees, you know those Jobs Plus data metrics, and you know that youth in Jobs Plus purposes is defined as residents at the target sites aged 14 to 17. And the focus of the data reporting, though, and programming for Jobs Plus, we also know that the focus is really on that workforce age 18 to 64. So you might be thinking, okay, let me understand a bit more about today's focus on youth and young adults. Well, by talking about youth and young adults, it does a couple things. One, it helps think through what individuals would be turning 18 during the term of your grant and your programming and potentially participating in Jobs Plus. And it also gives focus to thinking about just that young adult group, that 18 to 24 aged group, and how to really engage and maximize their participation in Jobs Plus. And that age range is what we're going to be focusing on in the programs you're about to hear about today. So while we are aware that you may be familiar with many of these programs that the presenters are going to share with you, we also wanted to encourage you to kind of consider them and how such programs can be best leveraged in your own programs population, and specifically youth and young adult, to again overall help further those Jobs Plus outcomes of increasing earnings and advancing employment outcomes. We also wanted to note that our experts are going to be talking in portions of the presentation about workforce development boards, American Job Centers. So just wanted to acknowledge that we know that you are well familiar with that as Jobs Plus grantees. The Workforce Board partnership is required by statute in the Jobs Plus program. But again, the goal here is to really make sure everyone has a good understanding of how you can connect in with those organizations and really to be able to use them most effectively in your implementation of your Jobs Plus program to support your residents. So thank you for letting me set the stage just a little bit from the HUD view of things, and I will turn it back over to Laura. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Lee. And with that, I am going to turn it directly over to my colleague, Danielle. Danielle Chiralus is a senior workforce consultant with ICF, and she is going to get us started on this portion of the presentation, and she's going to introduce our expert panel. So take it away, Danielle.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you again for the opportunity to meet with all of you. I had the pleasure of meeting some of you last time, and I'm hopeful that this session related to youth and young adult career pathways will provide to you some resources that will be able to support your residents and also young adults in general. Just wanted to let you know that today's panel, afterwards, we'll have a question and answer period at the end, and we welcome your thoughts, your shared stories of success in this capacity upon conclusion of the session. I will introduce today's panelists. They include Adele Soto, who is a career workforce development professional with over 30 years of experience in local and national workforce programs. She joined ICF in May 2019 and provides executive leadership to the U.S. Virgin Islands for several collaborative efforts with the Virgin Island Department of Labor, including the HUD CDBG DR funded Skills for Today program and also the Disaster Dislocated Worker program. Adele provides subject matter expertise for the Cybersecurity Youth Apprenticeship Intermediary Project, and she has previously served as the executive director of the Virgin Islands Workforce Development Board, where she provided operational guidance and policy support for local workforce activities. She's worked with multiple industry sector development work groups and has co-designed outreach and implementation plans to engage the communities hardest to serve in career exploration and training activities to equip them with relevant skills to compete in the ever-changing labor force. So today she will offer some guidance on some recommended practices for career planning for youth and young adults. We also have Miss Adrienne Parkman. Attorney Adrienne Parkman is a multi-talented executive who oversees all program operations of a regional nonprofit organization in southwestern Connecticut called The Workplace. With nearly 20 years of workforce development experience, she's developed and implemented successful programs that have been recognized nationally as promising practices. She's a speaker on issues relating to education, training, and workforce development. She's also a faculty at Post University in Naugatuck Valley Community College in Connecticut, and a past president of the board of the Connecticut Women's Education and Legal Fund, and serves on several other boards and commissions. We have with us also Mr. Peter Calvo. Peter was honorably discharged from the United States Marine Corps and began his extensive Job Corps career. He has, since 1990, held various Job Corps Center staff and leadership roles, and he's been a notable leader of successful Job Corps operators throughout the country. Mr. Calvo's success within Job Corps led him to also position as a Deputy Regional Director for the U.S. Department of Labor and as a Division Chief of Operations in the Philadelphia region. He has served in the National Job Corps Association Operators Advisory Board and chaired the National Job Corps Association Training Committee, and his most recent role is as the Vice President of Business Development and Compliance with Education and Training Resources, which is a Job Corps operator. So, without further ado, I will present Adrienne for the first piece on Youth Build and the American Job Center Network.
Thank you so much, Danielle, and I guess we're on Thursday afternoon, everyone. As Danielle said, I'm Adrienne Parkman, and I serve as Chief Operating Officer for the Workplace. And my goal today is twofold: to inform you of two very important programs that are tailor-made for collaboration with the Jobs Plus program. Youth Build, if it's available in your area and there's a grantee, will assist you, as well as programs through the American Job Center, through our Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Program, so affectionately known, as you know, as WIOA. As the Workforce Development Board for Southwestern Connecticut, we oversee 4 American Job Centers in our area, and we also have a mobile job center that we developed in 2004. So we're going on about 19 years now of having a mobile one-stop that goes throughout the region. And we are a Youth Build grantee. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about Youth Build. So many of you are aware of what Youth Build does, but Youth Build started in 1988 in New York. It is the federal funding stream, which has been in every federal budget since 1992. And this was bipartisan legislation in 92 that was led by former Senator John Kerry out of Massachusetts. So since 1992, there has been a line item in the federal budget for Youth Build. So who does Youth Build serve? Youth Build serves ages 16 to 24, and it's focused on individuals who do not have a high school diploma or equivalency. What does Youth Build provide to these individuals? Well, vocational skills, occupational skills in construction and healthcare, and any other in-demand occupation that is written into a particular grantee's Youth Build application. The focus is, of course, helping individuals to attain their GED or high school equivalency while at the same time receiving their occupation and vocational skills. Where Jobs Plus can come in and fits right in with this is not only the age group and the eligibility of the individuals that might benefit, but also there is a component, which is a hands-on component of Youth Build, where our individuals in the program are required to do community service and also, like I said, this hands-on type of activity. So under our Youth Build program in the past, we have partnered with our housing authority here in Bridgeport, where the individuals were enrolled, as well as they were able to help with repainting apartments that they were turning over, doing some light minor repairs, all under the supervision of the housing authority staff. So this was a way for them to actually not only be participants that are residents of the housing authority, but also to engage in helping to repair things in their own space and in their neighborhood. So that was really good. Youth Build also provides significant supports, and supports, as we know, are very, very important, especially for this age group. So mentoring is very, very important, and that's a part of Youth Build, as well, of course, employment and personal counseling, and of course, that civic engagement. And one of the things that we did around civic engagement is involving the police department. So we worked with their community relations division to come in and help and talk to the young people so that it decreased and maybe mitigated some of the challenges that young people may have with the police department. And so the police officers got to know them, they got to know the police officers, and it was a good match. So next slide. So Youth Build program eligibility. Who is actually eligible for Youth Build? I will go over the Youth Build specifics, but one of the things that you have to know is that if they're male, and they can be male or female, of course, but if you're a male and you're over the age of 18, you have to have registered with the Selective Service. If you have not and you are under the age, I think it's around 54 or something of that nature, then we can do the registration. Or if you have not done the Selective Service because of some other issue, maybe incarceration or just not being aware of it, just because of how an individual may have grown up, then there are waivers that are available. Next slide. So the Youth Build program eligibility pretty much mirrors the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, or WIOA eligibility as well. That's why they're generally co-enrolled. And so individuals are from low income family, and they could be a youth in foster care, a youth offender, a young person with a disability, or they might be a child of incarcerated parents, or of course a migrant youth. Now, all of these eligibility criteria would have to be documented through the eligibility process. Next slide. So those are who are eligible. And as I said, they have to be between the ages of 16 to 24, and they must be a high school dropout, as I talked about a little while ago. Now, what the Youth Build grants do is provide a set aside of 25% enrollment exemption, so that if you want to enroll individuals who have a high school diploma or equivalency, then 25% of your enrollment can be from that particular population. Next slide. So this is, of course, a lot of words and very small. And if anyone is over my age, you can't see it because I can barely see it. But just wanted to just give you just an overview again of some of the eligibility criteria and some of the documentation that's required for enrollment into these programs. It probably aligns with a lot of the documentation that you already collect. That's why it's so important to connect with workforce boards, to have those memorandums of understanding in place so that we can share documents so that we are not double collecting and asking people to continue to give documentation. So of course, the youth, the documentation of low income as well, or any other eligibility requirements. And the key is to make sure that we have all this documentation in place and in both of our files as you go forward. Next slide. So just to talk about performance outcomes, in every program, of course, that's federally or state funded or even private funded, there's going to be some outcomes. And a lot of them will mirror each other. So that's why it's really good to collaborate, to co-enroll, and to work together, because my success is your success and vice versa. And at the end of the day, the biggest success is the individual who goes through the program. So youth build performance outcomes are based on enrollment, of course. You set your enrollment before you actually go in. Recidivism, we want to make sure that we are documenting the great work that's happening and how we have mitigated recidivism. So we do work with Department of Corrections or Office of Juvenile Justice to make sure that we are documenting recidivism. Literacy, numeracy, those are also things that we measure or part of enrollment as well under WIOA. And we use the common TABE test or CASAS, depending on your state, will be what documentation or what tool, assessment tool that's used. And another outcome, of course, is a degree or certification attainment. So the goal of Youth Build is to make sure that young people receive their high school diploma or equivalency or GED. And so once that's achieved, of course, then that benchmark is met. And at the end of the day, we all want young people to have careers, have a career pathway, is placed in a job, or at least on the road through post-secondary education. Next slide. So that was a little bit about Youth Build. So if you have a Youth Build program in your area, I would encourage you to connect with the Youth Build program, because there are tons of opportunities, not only for the youth that you are serving, but also a way for housing to connect and to be a partner in a Youth Build by providing that on-site, hands-on opportunity for young people. So the next thing I'll talk about, and I know you all know all about workforce development boards and WIOA and AJCs and our alphabet soup, as I like to call it, of workforce development. So I apologize if this is redundant to you, but hopefully I can provide you a little bit of additional insight. So a workforce development board, there's probably about 630 or so workforce development boards across the country, and they are statutorily created. So every area has a workforce development board, which of course is different than a job center. So a workforce development board is the receiving entity in most areas of the federal employment and training dollars, affectionately known as Workforce Innovation and Opportunity, or WIOA dollars. So our charge is to serve as connectors between the U.S. Department of Labor and, of course, our job centers, and also to be in the community and to be the collaborators around everything related to workforce development and career pathways. We oversee the job centers. As I said, in our region, we have 4 plus a mobile. Every region in the country has to have at least one comprehensive site. And then you can have satellites or affiliates. People call them different things, but that one comprehensive site has to include all the mandated partners touching it in some way, which I'll talk about in a minute. So the job of the Workforce Development Board is to take a step back, have a broader lens, to have a strategic and policy making kind of role, as opposed to the direct hands-on working one-on-one with the participants coming through the door. That's what the job centers do. But the overarching is the Workforce Development Board. And of course, our customers as a Workforce Development Board is a job seeker and of course the employer. And it's the same customers that you see coming through or working with the job center. So we want to make sure that what we're planning in that strategy and policy mode are reflective of the job needs and the employment trends that are happening in the community, and that our training is being responsive to what the employer and the community needs. Next slide. So our functions are threefold, which I can say, like I said, very different than our job center operations. So we have the strategic function of developing a plan, and every board that develops a plan has to put their plan out for public comment to make sure they're talking to all their stakeholders, which would include housing. So you should be at the table saying what the needs are of your constituents and how the workforce development system should be responsive to that. We negotiate performance measures. As we talked about, we all have performance measures. And so we negotiate with our states on what those measures would be. We also build system capacity. So we want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of employers and as well as our job seekers, and being that broker of employment services in our community, as well as making sure we are aligning our systems and that we are being the most effective and impactful in our communities as we possibly can. One of the keys, of course, is we have to develop the memorandums of understanding with our mandated partners. Every Workforce Development Board has a MOU, or supposed to have a MOU by law with every mandated partner, which includes housing, that talks about these are the things that we will provide to housing and what housing can provide to the system. Again, not to duplicate services because that would be inefficient, but to work in collaboration so that we can co-enroll, co-leverage, and kind of meld funding in order to make sure that the individuals that we are collectively serving have the best opportunity at a career and a future. So a little bit, next slide. You can go to the next slide as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about job centers, or AJCs. They used to be called one-stops. And if you are experienced enough, or I wouldn't say old enough, I'm just going to experienced enough like me, there's probably still call them the unemployment offices, right? But these are places that have evolved over the years to not only contain services about unemployment compensation, but also employment services. So it's a place for individuals to find job assistance, job placement, as well as access to occupational skills training. We also provide wraparound and support services, all access through the job centers, as well as career pathway information. It is also a place where our partners come to provide services on site as well, whether it's a full co-location, whether it's a 1 day a week or 1 day a month. It's a way for us to serve our common customers. One of the things that we have done is what we call case conferencing with partners. So for example, we work a lot with Bureau of Rehab Services for individuals and young people and adults who have disabilities. And a lot of times we are serving the same individuals. So let's make sure that any plan that Voc Rehab has or we have, we're on the same page, and that we are making sure our counselors are talking to each other so the plan for the individual is cohesive. So we encourage that through our American Job Center services. Next slide. So how many of these things do we have? There are at least 2,400 job centers across the country. So I'm sure there's one in your neck of the neighborhood as well. And one should be in your community. So I would encourage you to visit the bricks and mortar to see what services are there and to make sure that you understand the process. So when you're working with your participants, you can help them to understand the process as well. And I would encourage you to reach out and connect with local staff because, again, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And again, it's all towards the same goal because we all have it. We want to make sure that the individuals we're working with, the young people that we're working with, have the best opportunity they can and can leverage all of the services that's available through the job centers and through your Jobs Plus grants. Next slide. So Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. So that is the funding stream, and that funding stream is used to support the staff and the services that are in the job center. So there are 3 funding streams under Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. There is adult funding, there's dislocated worker funding, and there's youth funding. And I'll talk about the differences between those. So this thing called WIOA is there to provide resources so that we can make sure our system is job driven, that it is based on what the employer needs, and it's constantly being nimble enough to be responsive. So not only does it respond to the employer need, but also the job seekers' needs. And the job seekers' needs have changed over time, as we know. And we have to, as a system, be responsive to that. So that's where we need our partners to constantly inform us of what services they're seeing with the folks they're working with so that we can adapt to what is needed. And I'm always a big fan of meeting with partners to make sure that we are being impactful in meeting those needs. Next slide. So I'll talk a little bit about our core programs. Next slide. As I said before, oops, we went to the youth program first. Oh, I switched up my slides here. So our youth program. So as I said, there are 3 funding streams in Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. There's youth, there's dislocated worker, and there's adult funding. So the youth funding is called out in the youth legislation, youth section of the WIOA legislation is called out in the legislation to be separate. Most of the dislocated worker and the adult funding stream, those dollars are generally through the American Job Center, AJC. Youth programs are held different. The difference with the youth program, one is any training is generally based on a cohort model as opposed to an individual training account, ITA, which I'm sure you've heard of, or a training voucher. And the youth program serves in-school and out-of-school youth, and the focus is on out-of-school youth, 18 and older. And if you qualify under the youth program, based on some of the same characteristics that I laid out under Youth Build, which are pretty much the same, then you will qualify as an adult as well, as we'll get into. And I always talk about how you have dual citizenship between the ages of 18 and 24. So if you qualify under the youth program, we can serve you through the youth program. If you need more of a cohort model, a lot more support services to help you to get where you need to go. Or you can also qualify under the adult program where you can go have an ITA or individual training account and go to maybe your community college or some other private vendor that will serve you as well. And the goal of the youth program is to serve kids in school and out of school that have barriers to them getting either graduating from high school or getting employment. Next slide. So the required partners in our AJCs. So this slide again, might not be able to see it too well, but these are in the legislation that everyone who's required to be a partner. I love how we mandate partners, right? Partner seems to be a voluntary term, but we are mandating it, and that's what the legislation tells us. So you can see that there's a variety of partners here. And all of these partners have memorandums of understanding with their local workforce development board for services through the American Job Center network. So you can see we serve Department of Labor. We have a MOU with Department of Education, Rehab Service, Veterans, who's a priority of service, of course, older workers. Job Corps, who you hear from shortly, is a mandated required partner of our system. Youth Build, if there's a program in the area, is a required partner. And as you can see, Housing and Urban Development, Employment and Training Programs is also a required partner of the system. That also means that required partners should have a seat on the Workforce Development Board. So housing authorities are supposed to have seats on your local Workforce Development Board. I have 2 housing authorities who have seats on my board because I know how important it is to connect our system to their system. Next slide. Our WEO adult program. So as I said, this goes through our American Job Center. Now, our youth program, as I said, is a cohort model. We handle it differently than maybe most. I have a separate youth division that handles all the youth. So the youth don't necessarily go through the American Job Centers, but other areas might handle youth a little differently. So the adult program is used to serve those who are 18 plus, who, if they're male, register for selective services. And again, they are public assistance recipients, low income, basic skills deficient. That's it. So if those can be documented, then the individual would be eligible for all the services of the of the American Job Center, whether that's career services, basic career services, individual intensive services, or occupational skills training. Next slide. Our dislocated worker program provides the same types of services, which is, your basic career services all the way up to occupational skills. The difference is the individuals who are deemed dislocated workers, their eligibility is not based on income. It's based on some other triggering event, whether it's a job loss, a mass layoff, or there's some documentation that they have no likelihood of returning to their previous occupation. Next slide. So as you talked about performance measures, just so that you can understand how you can benefit, and Jobs Plus can benefit the Workforce Development Board and the Job Centers. This is how, the partnership, conversation should be like. You're mutually going to help each other. So these are the performance measures if we enroll an individual into the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. WEOA is an outcome-based or exit-based program. As long as someone's enrolled in our program, they're receiving career services, they're in training, they're not measured. They only are measured upon exit. That's when the measurement happens. So what are we measured on? We are measured on Q2 employment. So the second quarter after exit, you need to be employed in order for us to make that benchmark. The fourth quarter after exit, you need to be employed. You have to obtain a nationally recognized credential, and we have to measure your skill gain. So that requires some pre-testing, as well as either your proof that you got a credential or some other type of post testing that will help us to meet the measurable skill gain. So just, not going to get into all that. I know you have a lot of data and performance measures, but just to help you out to understand that, at the end of the day, this is how workforce boards are measured, by those 4 common measures. And so any conversation around how it's mutually beneficial should include how we can both help each other make those measures. Next slide. So with WEOA, the training for adults, as I said, youth are group contracts, and those are cohort-based. Under WEOA, if they qualify as an adult or dislocated worker, their training options come from what we call the eligible training provider list. So every area has one, and those individual entities that are on that list have been vetted through whatever channels in your particular state. They are supposed to be vetted. They can be for-profit, nonprofit, educational institutions. And what we do is we pay for training directly for that particular individual. So it doesn't have to be 20 people going to one place. It could be one individual. They have the classes up. The classes are on the eligible training provider list, and they can then get that training. And that is it for me. Hope that was helpful.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. We're going to touch base with you at the end if need be, but I Yeah, I'm sure people will have questions then, but for now, we'll move forward to Adele.
Thank you, Danielle. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Adele Soto. I'm a senior, excuse me, a senior director for workforce innovations at ICF. And I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about the youth experience. Um, as you know, young people, youth and young adult, and we can do the whole range from 14 years old to 24 years old. I know youth for your program is 14 to 17, and they're definitely included, but we also are going to consider a little bit in this presentation the 18 to 24-year-olds. They can be a very difficult population for many reasons. And that's the beauty of planning for youth programs. Youth programs offer wraparound services that adults and other programs don't. And so we're going to just delve in a little bit to see how, when you're considering either developing a youth program or working with another entity that has a youth program, how that can work best for your customer and your client. Next slide, please. The importance of preparation is the most important thing that anyone can do when working with a young person, either individually or in a cohort, planning their future. Most young people, especially if you're talking about 14 to 17-year-olds, really have no idea what they want to do with their lives. But everyone tells them now is the time to start planning. Now is the time to start preparing for what you want to do with your future. So, how can you help them? The best way to help them is to help them develop a plan. The plan can be called an individual service strategy. It can be called an individual employment plan. It can be called many things, but the importance of the plan is that they actually think about and put in writing something that makes sense to them, something that charts the steps from the time they decide that they want to think about what they're going to do with the rest of their lives, to show the paths that they have to follow, whether it's academic, whether it's trade, whatever it may be. Your individual service strategy, your plan helps you make that chart to go forward. How do you start? You start by listing hobbies, interests, activities. Maybe a young person is interested in cooking or gardening, fixing gadgets, fixing people. Those things can translate into real careers. Those things, someone who is interested in cooking as a young person can grow up and become a chef. Someone who's been tinkering in the garden with their grandparent or something, they can end up becoming a landscaper. Those who are interested in fixing gadgets or fixing people can become technicians or healthcare workers. And of course, if they're interested in building things, they can get into the construction industry. Just because you don't know quite what you want to do when you get older is no reason to say, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my future. Now is the time to start planning. You get them to think about what interests them at this point in time and what they can do with it to grow it. How do they do that? They can research the areas that on different channels, whether it's by job shadowing, talking to an older person, going to career fairs, looking at social media, not too much of that though, or even going into the AJCs. Most AJCs have a youth component to it. So, they'll be talking to their peers. They can speak to school counselors. They can speak to community counselors and community leaders, and they can help them find out how they can get to be a part of that real world experience, because it's a whole world of opportunity. There's so many things they can do. One of the most important things is to be able to connect with a mentor if possible. An older mentor in a field that they may be interested in, someone who's a cook, who has worked in cafeterias, who has worked in restaurants, who has a food truck to the side of the road. Those are people they need to talk to. Those are people they can job shadow. Connections like that can be made. They're usually very cost effective, and the young person gain a lot from just looking and observing and seeing what someone is actually doing in the field rather than just hearing about it. And it's an unpaved road. It takes work and commitment. None of this happens without planning, without purpose. Um, you need to think about whether it's an academic track you want to go down or whether it's a career and technical track. Both are worthy, both require a lot of preparation, both require a lot of learning. When making that decision, do you want to have a degree? Do you want to have a certificate? You know, both carry equal weight depending on the field that you go into, and none should be discouraged. And of course, there's always military careers. Lots of careers get formed through the military. Individuals who join the military, they get to do things that they never even knew existed before. And once they leave the military, they find that they have jobs in areas that they never knew existed before. Next slide, please. Adult education. Adult education is available to youth who have either dropped out of school, who are older in their career. Maybe they had a family before and never got to finish their education, or whatever may happen. And there's several ways that they can complete the education. Most programs will always encourage you to complete that high school diploma, if nothing else. There are many ways to do that. They can attend day or night school for high school completion. They can get a GED. They can get an online high school diploma as long as it's with a recognized institution. And there are many national programs such as Job Corps, Youth Build, as my colleagues have talked about, that also encourage that high school diploma component as part of their program. And there are many local programs that are run by community-based organizations or nonprofits that will build in the high school component. It's always the first step to completing your career path. For post-secondary preparation, there's still the need to have your basic testing to get into post-secondary once you've completed your high school diploma. You can take the PSAT, the SAT, the ACT, the ASVAB for military. All these tests are preparatory tests that young people should be encouraged to take as part of their preparation for getting into the workforce. Those who have been out of school for a while may be a little shaky with literacy and numeracy. Work readiness programs that have that as a component are always important to put in the front end of whatever career plan you develop. And of course, connecting to the workforce. There are career centers, like my colleagues just spoke about, trade schools that focus on a particular thing, whether it's construction or auto mechanics or airplane mechanics or something like that. Community colleges. There are many community colleges. Many of them don't have as long a curriculum that has to be completed in order for someone to get a certificate or a degree. And many people can choose that. A lot of young people shy away from the idea of college because they think, I don't want to commit that much of my life to getting a degree and then I can't find a job and I have all these bills to pay right now, because we know that young people become engaged in the act of living at a very early age these days. So we can never discount the fact that they have a family to support. Community colleges may be the option. They won't take as much of a time commitment as a 4-year degree would. They can engage in part-time employment, and preferably through a registered apprenticeship, which will allow them to work, earn money, and still get the academics that they need, have that mentoring component. They can wrap that all together in a registered apprenticeship by the time it's completed, usually within a year to 2 years. Some occupations may require more time than that. By the time they're finished, they can come out with multiple certifications. They can come out with a high school diploma if they don't have one. They can come out with an associate's degree if that's part of the curricula. Registered apprenticeships are a good way to be in the workforce, to earn money, and still be able to get the academic support that they need. Next slide, please. Workforce development. And I won't talk about this too much because this is a lot WIOA based, but there are a few things about WIOA that my colleague just spoke about that are very important to consider when you're talking about youth. WIOA has something that's called the 14 youth program elements, and they're all very important, but I'm only going to focus on a few of them today. But just for the record, the 14 are tutoring and study skills, alternative secondary school, paid and unpaid work experience, occupational skills training, education offered concurrently with workforce preparation and training, meaning the education is wrapped into the work experience, much like a registered apprenticeship or a pre-apprenticeship is. Leadership development opportunities, supportive services, adult mentoring, follow-up services, comprehensive guidance and counseling, financial literacy and education, entrepreneurial skills training, labor market information, and post-secondary preparation and transition activities. If you look at these 14 program elements, you'll see how closely they match to Plus initiative goals. I was surprised when I was researching this to see how many of those goals fit into your employment related services, financial incentives, and community supports for work. So it's a very good match if you get to know all the details of those 14 elements. But for right now, let me focus on the summer work experience. That is the first time that many young people have an experience with the world of work, whether they're 16 years old and in school, or they're 18 years old and they've dropped out of school before. Having that work experience, being in a atmosphere where they can connect with peers, either who are in the same situation as they are, or who may not be in the same situation as they are. Having a boss, something they may have never encountered before, having to be responsible, having to report to work daily, having to be there timely and to respect the rules of the workplace. These are skills that they learn during the summer work experience, but it's for a short period of time. It's for a month or two at the most, and they can really come out of there not only with a good work ethic, but also maybe with a better understanding of what it is to plan that career. So when you're helping the young person develop their career plan, always try to see if you can get a summer work experience in there, because that will solidify everything that you're putting on paper. Of course, with the out of school youth, they can get that work experience at any time of the year if they're out of school, but it's a very important part of the planning process. Supportive services. Supportive services are included not only when a young person is enrolled in an educational program or a training program, but it can be useful once they complete the program of study and they're now looking to transition into the workforce. Things like assistance with transportation and childcare, legal aid services, referrals to healthcare, assistance with uniforms, work attire, and work-related tools. These are things that they don't know that they're going to need before they get hired for a job. Even something as getting a certification or taking a test that's necessary to get into that particular job. All these things are support services that can be given to a young person, not only when they're in their program of study, but once they come out and they're entering the workforce to get them started on those first few days. And finally, following up. Once you have your plan together, once the young person is executing the plan, once they're doing the research and they're finding out where their interests are and where their aptitude lies, whether it's in the academic field or the trades or something else, once they're getting that work experience, once they've received the supportive services, what happens next? What happens when they finish their course of study? It's important always to include follow-up in that plan. You have to check in with them, whether they have an adult mentor, whether they have a community service mentor, whether they have peer mentorships going on. It's important for those first few months, maybe even a year after they finish their program of study with your organization or with an academic institution or whatever, to follow up with them and get feedback from them. What worked for them? What didn't work for them? Where do they need the most support right now? All those things are important, and they can add those things to their career plan as they go along. And they can always go back and see where they needed to tweak the information and what other uh, services, what other activities are necessary to help them achieve their goals. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adele. Now we will have Peter provide information about Job Corps.
Okay, thank you so much, Danielle. I understand we might be a little bit behind, so I'm going to try to speed us up a little bit. But first, thanks for the opportunity. It's certainly my pleasure to discuss the Job Corps program and the many opportunities it can provide to eligible youth and young adults. Job Corps is funded by the U.S. Department of Labor, Employment and Training Administration, and the Office of Job Corps through our enabling legislation, WEOS, previously discussed by Adriana. The program is operated by a variety of private companies as well as the U.S. Forest Service, who are within the Department of the Interior. These centers are operated on national parks across the nation. During today's presentation, I'll be discussing a little bit about the history of the program, how it works, how students can apply, and the benefits it offers. Next slide, please. So what is Job Corps? Job Corps is the nation's largest free residential career training and education program. I guess similar to Youth Build, Job Corps serves disadvantaged youth between the ages of 16 to 24. We have 30,000 slots across the nation. In each state, we have 121 Job Corps campuses in every state and in Puerto Rico. The length of time usually takes about 8 months to 3 years. The normal enrollment requirement for Job Corps is up to 2 years. If a student then enrolls into what we call our advanced career training program, which is a concurrent enrollment college program, then the student can enroll for another year. A student can also transfer from one Job Corps center to another Job Corps center and enroll in one of our many advanced career training programs. So our most successful students typically stay in the program about 18 months. Next slide. Job Corps program was originally established in 1964 by the Johnson administration as part of their war on poverty. Since then, we had more than 3 million young adults receive career and technical education through Job Corps. And among our graduates include some famous folks like George Foreman, the boxer and entrepreneur, or some might know Mike Epps. He's a comedian and an actor, as well as many wonderful educators across the country. Job Corps is very proud to work with American Job Corps centers and our other WEOA partners across the nation. And if you haven't already, please reach out and connect with the folks at your local Job Corps center. As our name implies, we're all about jobs. Our ultimate goal is to make sure our graduates, or former enrollees as we call them, did not complete the program and get into an entry-level job or register apprenticeship, join the military, or continue their education through college. Next slide, please. Job Corps has similar eligibility criteria as Youth Build. Adrian discussed all those particulars. Obviously, we need to be 16 to 24-year-olds. There's 10 specific criteria in Job Corps that will be evaluated by our admission staff. In addition, several of our Job Corps centers have child development centers on site, and many others partner with a local agency to support daycare needs of students. All the students that are enrolled in Job Corps, they must pass a pretty rigid background check. We have our own Job Corps applicant check system, which is work between the Defense Counterintelligence Agency and Security Agency, and it's an interface with the Division of Personnel Security and Suitability at the U.S. Department of Labor. This ensures that those students who come to campus have a free and clear criminal history record to make sure that all students on our centers are safe. Next slide, please. Job Corps offers a variety of training and career options. Our ultimate goal is basically to work closely with state and local workforce system to expand our reach and become an employer pipeline to meet the hiring needs of various companies. Many of the trades offered are taught by industry experts from labor unions such as United Auto Workers, the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners, Plasters and Cement Masons Organization, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, to name a few. These partnerships really help us to engage students in apprenticeship placements within their own career pathway, and the unions do a great job with those MOUs. Next slide, please. As a primary residential education and training program, we offer a number of benefits, including housing and career skills training or academic instruction, high school diploma or equivalency, depending upon the track of the individual student. Our basic health care at each of our Job Corps centers, we do have our own doctor, dentist, hygienist, optometrist, mental health professional. So all those services are provided. We do have a number of partnerships with local employers where we offer internships, externships, or work-based learning opportunities. Through our own staff and through partnership with the AJCs and various organizations, we do provide career placement and transitional support services. Overall, Job Corps, once a student's enrolled, Job Corps looks at three particular phases: the career prep phase, the career development phase, and a career transition phase. As we go to the next slide, we will jump right into the career prep phase. The career prep phase is sort of the first 60 days in a program. This is an opportunity for students to acclimate to the center life. Many students aren't used to having a pretty rigid schedule for, waking up, going to bed, doing your homework and those type of things. So, homesickness is a big thing, and we try to work on programs to sort of reduce that. We don't want to lose students early in the program, so we try to provide intensive services during the career prep period too. We perform medical assessments, all the academic assessments to determine a student's reading and math levels. We look at career interest and their abilities, and then look toward making sure we put them in a career plan that is suitable for them. We also do a full medical background history assessment on each student to make sure that we are providing the students with the services they need and that they are employable and have the resources necessary to do whatever they need to do. Once they're through that career preparation period, then they come to the career development period on the next slide. The career development period is where the intensive core content classes begin for those students who are basic skills deficient or have low reading and math levels. We put them in basic skills courses, high school diploma courses, GED courses, whatever area that they particularly need. We also provide work-based learning opportunity. And since it's a residential program, it also provides us an opportunity to provide evening and weekend studies that promote independent living, how to balance your budget, how to write a check, and those type of things that when you go to college, they don't teach you that kind of stuff. So Job Corps does a great job of that. We also provide many leadership opportunities. So we'll have dorm leaders, group leaders, trade leaders, and those type of things. So that's really good. And we do evaluations on students every quarter. Every 90 days, we'll do evaluations. Those evaluations are done to sort of mirror what a student needs to get used to in the world of work. And then we look at transitioning those students out, which is the final phase, the career transition period. This begins when a student is projected for separation and pretty much have completed their core requirements. Next slide, I'll talk a little about career transition. So once a student's finished all their training, we're going to look at and review their employment and career goals. We're going to provide them assistance on jobs, apprenticeships, or ongoing education. And we're also going to put together a plan for them that deals with any barriers to employment, such as housing, transportation, daycare, childcare, financial planning, and the works. Next slide, please. Job Corps has a wonderful system to really promote transparency as much as possible. The screen here, and if you get this link, this presentation, there is a link to this that basically breaks down each of the centers in each of the states so you can find a particular center near you. Job Corps is broken down into 6 regions across the country. A Job Corps student does not need to go to a Job Corps center in their state. They can go to one in the region. They can go to one across the country. What we want to do is make sure we are matching the career desires of a student with the Job Corps training, since every Job Corps center provides a different type of training program. So we want to meet their needs. From this map, you can identify a center. You can learn more about that center. You can even take a virtual tour of that center, go into the shops, go into the classrooms, go into the dorms, go into the recreational facilities or the dining hall, do whatever you want. Each Job Corps center looks like a mini college campus, has everything you want and could desire on that particular center. The next slide's going to put in a little plug for education and training resources. We are one of many operators of Job Corps programs, education and training resources. We have 9 prime contracts and 2 major contracts to operate the program. Most recently, we constructed Job Corps' first telecommunication training towers at our center in Oneonta Job Corps Center. These 2 towers, one is 100-foot, one is 60-foot. They serve as training stations for our advanced overhead line and residential distribution system. This initiative is really aligned with our partnership with the Tennessee Valley Authority. They're the 6th largest power supplier in the nation, and they have an immense need to replace retiring electrical workers. So Job Corps centers across the country are pretty nimble and they can make adjustments. So if there's an employer out there that wants to go into the area, we'll certainly work with the local workforce system to adjust our program content to meet the employer needs. The next slide talks about my Job Corps Expressed Interest tool. This is a new way in which Job Corps can connect with applicants and stakeholders and even influencers to sort of begin Job Corps engagement. Really provides a user-friendly platform for both computer and a mobile device. Folks at HUD can certainly use this to connect with one of our admissions counselor, ask them to send recruiting material or marketing material, or even schedule center tours or an information session at your particular site. So if there is additional questions or comments, I leave you with my email as well as the phone number of the Job Corps National Office. Feel free to connect with them. Otherwise, go to the platform and you can Google any Job Corps center to take a virtual tour. So thank you so much, and hope you take advantage of the opportunity that we have.
Thank you so much, Pete. Do any participants have questions for the panel or anything specific that they might like to share regarding their involvement in youth or young adult programs that they'd like to use as a best practice or further discuss? We're happy to hear from you. Well, in the event that you would like to connect to any of the speakers or myself or receive any additional information, I will put my email in the chat and you can feel free to reach out to me. Thank you all for your time and attention.
Hey, hi again, everybody. And I'll just one more time thank Adrian and Adele and Peter. Thank you so much for your time, your expertise. I hope that folks are looking forward to connecting with the speakers and figuring out how to most effectively work with these programs to support your youth. Of course, feel free to reach out to Danielle as well, and she is happy to connect you as needed. I see a lot of questions about the recording as well as the slides. They will be posted, and you'll receive an update from us that they are available on HUD Exchange, and you can go ahead and watch the recording and take a look at the slides. So with that, we are going to move to our next segment of the presentation. We are going to do a pretty brief refresher of using the JPEID tool. I'll mention that we've done a full kind of more in-depth training earlier this year on that tool for capturing your data and collecting it and calculating your JPEID data and metrics. That is available on the HUD Exchange. We'll show you a link to that on an upcoming slide. And at our last office hours call, we also did an overview of that. So this refresher will be pretty quick. I know that a lot of the things coming up for you guys related to the JPEID tool really do require some more one-on-one digging into your specific tool and your data. So of course the TA team is available to do that, and we will do our very best to get back to you as quickly as possible and to address the issues that you are running into. But I am going to turn it over to my colleague Nitan, and he is going to do a very brief refresher just to remind everybody some of the early actions that you need to do to make sure using the tool works well for you. So with that, I'll turn it to Nitan. I'll also mention that there are slides in this presentation with some key reminders and key things to look out for, which Nitan will go over using a screen share in the next couple of minutes. So Nitan, all yours.
Yes, thank you, Laura. And hello, everyone. I'm gonna, sorry, losing my voice today. I'm going to have my screen off just so that we can ensure maximum speed for the demo today. And let me go over to the tool. Okay. And just as I had recommended last time, definitely encourage you all to minimize the amount of tabs that you have open just to ensure that the tool is working as quickly and as smoothly as possible. Because this is a brief refresher, I will not really be going too much over this instruction sheet, nor will I be going over the background tab. So I encourage you all to watch that previous recording if you have specific questions on that. And like Laura mentioned, also certainly do reach out to us if you have questions about those as well. But definitely encourage you all to spend some time, if you haven't already, and kind of read through the instructions. So the last thing that I'll mention is that there are these fiscal year sheets. I also won't be going too heavily into these today. All you really need to know about those fiscal year tabs is that they have lots and lots of really helpful data that is locked and that can be edited through different options in the menu sheet, which I'll go into right now. Okay, so this is a menu sheet. It is your home base. This is where you will be mostly using the tool, and there are a number of features, like I mentioned, available to you in this particular sheet. So to begin with, if you're starting out from scratch, we need to add a household's information into the JPID tool. And to do this, you'll need to click on the entry form. I'm going to do that now with you all in real time. And as you'll see at the top of the entry form, I go over this in greater detail in the other presentation that we have the recording for, but there's a color key that kind of explains what all these colors in the entry form mean. So I'm going to try to breeze through this entry form. Bear with me. Right now, I'm just putting in some key information about the year, the month, the household ID, all information that I'm totally making up just for the purposes of today's presentation. Okay, so I'm putting the unit number as well. And I put 2 adults. Oh, okay. All right. So I'm going to put $25,000 as the total income for the household. Now, this $25,000 includes both earned and unearned, which the tool automatically calculates. Once you key in some earned income here at the bottom, it'll subtract the rest to determine how much of it is unearned. So I'm putting the allowances as well, and the utility allowance. And as I mentioned, there are 2 household members, so I'm going to just do both of them here. Okay. Now what I'm doing here, I'm putting the information for this household when they first enrolled into the program. This is the baseline month. And so I'm going to select this button here because, like I said, there are 2 adult household members and they are both enrolled in the program. If this household had, I don't know, let's say 3 adult members and 2 of them were enrolled, then I would only select the first 2 and keep this unselected because this section is really for the ones that are actually enrolled in the program. So I'm going to just key in a few more pieces of information. Bear with me, everyone. Okay. And I just need to say when they first join the household, again, data that I'm totally making up. All right. And then the last important thing that I did want to mention as far as the entry form is concerned for today's refresher is that this calculation section at the bottom is your friend. Once you click on calculate values, it's going to show you some other values like what the TTP is, the JPID amount, and so on and so forth. Obviously, JPID amount is 0 because, as I mentioned, we just enrolled this household. This is their baseline information. So there typically shouldn't be any JPID amount when they're first enrolling. So once I click on the calculate values and I see that all the information here is good, I'm going to click on submit, and that will paste this information into those fiscal year tabs that I had mentioned. As you can see here, it's now no longer blank. So I've just entered this household and I put information for the month of March, but let's say I'd like to put in some information now, for the month of April. There are a few different ways of doing that, and I'll be really quickly going through all of those. So the first one is through the entry form again. So what I can do is select current year 2021 again. This time I'll do April. Again, remember the enrollment month was March. I'll choose the household number. So this is the month right after. And now this go around, I needed to select, is this household still in the unit? So you would need to select no if they move to a different unit, but are otherwise still in the JPID program. But in this case, I'm just going to select yes. And then I click tab for the other information to auto-populate. Now, I would like to create a JPID amount here at the bottom just for fun. And so I'm going to make it so that the total income is 35,000. That again includes earned and unearned. And so I'm just going to increase the income for this first household member by $5,000. And then when I click at the bottom here to calculate values, you will see that now it shows JPID amount of 125 here, and of course JPID amount of 125 here, plus an additional $5,000 that's unearned, right? As I mentioned, the tool automatically calculates that once you key in that information here at the bottom, and it calculated 5,000 because the total income was 35,000, but really their earned income together is 30,000. So I'm going to click submit. Now I just put in information for this household for the month of April. So 2 more features as far as how to copy data from one month to the next. You have this copy records feature. So I'm going to click on that next. Okay. And you have to put the household ID. If you're copying records for multiple households, you can certainly put that here as well, but I'm only doing one household. And now I would like to select the month that I'm copying it from. As you remember, I started by enrolling them in March. I then copied data over to the month of April. So I'd like to copy the most recent data from that month of April. And I'm going to select 3 different months that I'd like to copy this data over. So nothing changed over those months, and I just want to copy it over to them. So I selected those, and you'll see they're highlighted blue. And then I'm selecting the year 2021. And I'll click on copy month. And that was so quick. I'm not going to scroll through the fiscal year tabs, but that data has now copied over to each of those months. If for whatever reason there's been a change in income, or maybe another household member enrolled, or whatever other change that you might need to make, you could always go back to the entry form and select a household member, or sorry, rather select the household and the month that you'd like to make changes to through the entry form. And so the last way to copy data from one month to the next, and it's definitely the preferred method, is to use this add month feature. So in this case, I have just copied data from March to April, right, using the entry form. I then, for the purposes of the demo, did a few more months with the copy records, and it's taken me all the way to the month of July, where I have data there of, of copied data there. So for the add month feature, all I have to do is select the year that I'm copying from and the month that I'm copying from, and you'll see the tool automatically will calculate what the next month is, and it will copy the data for every single household from that month over to the next month, including their JPAD amount, including their earned income, and so on and so forth. So I'll just click on Add Month. Okay, and that is done. So now if I click back on the fiscal year tab, you'll see that I have data all the way into the month of August, um, even though we started way in March. So again, different ways of copying data from month to month, depending on your needs. We definitely recommend add month, followed by going into the entry form and making edits specific to any households that you might need to make edits to. I know I'm breezing through this, just a couple of more features, I promise. And like I said, do reach out to us if you have specific questions, and definitely watch the recording as well. Every quarter, you need to submit a quarterly report to HUD. I have already generated that ahead of time, but basically you'll just need to go over here, and in this case, I selected current year 2021 and quarter 3, and I clicked on the quarterly report button. That then generated this report. Reminder, this is a static report. So if I go afterwards and add additional households, if I make any edits to any of the households, that data won't be in here. There are no formulas. This is all hard-coded information. And so if you make updates in the data, you then need to regenerate this report to have that information in here. You can, of course, click on the Save Report button, and that will generate a separate Excel workbook just of the quarterly report, and that's what you can submit to HUD. And then once a year, you also need to submit the op fund report, the rent report, over to HUD, and that's similar to the quarterly report. You click on the particular fiscal year, then you click on the rent report. That will create a rent report tab here to the right that again is static. So if you make changes, you get it. You'll need to click on that button again, and that's how that will function. So the very, very last feature that I will quickly go over today is this delete records button. Let's say you made a mistake and you want to delete a month for a particular household. Maybe they're no longer, enrolled in the program, or maybe you just need to make several edits, and instead of going through the entry form, you just want to kind of delete their information and try again. You do that through this delete records feature. So in this case, I only have one household ID. So I'm just going to put that here, but you can select, you can, just like the copy records feature, you can delete multiple records for multiple household IDs at the same time. You then have this option here. Do I want to delete the entire record? So pretend that this ID was never there to begin with, right, in this tool. Do I want to delete it just for a specific month, or do I maybe want to delete it for multiple months? Just for the purposes of today's presentation, I'll do single month. And I would like to delete information for this household for the month of August 2021. So I select that and I'll do delete. It asks you whether you're sure you want to delete. I'll click yes. And that is done. And now if I go back to the fiscal year tab and I scroll over, sorry for all this movement here, you'll see this is the month of August and now we no longer have data there. So that was a very brief overview of all of the different features. Again, really encourage you all to spend some time in that longer format recording that we had, to reach out to us if you have any questions, to read over the FAQs that we have sent about the tool, and we can certainly resend those if you need, and to read those instructions. Lots of information here, and we're here to support you in any way we can. And with that, I will turn it back over to my colleague, Laura.
All right. Thank you, Nitan, and thank you all for, bearing with us with the whirlwind presentation and reminder about the JPE ID tool. Our hope is it kind of jogs your memory, gets you, reused to using the tool if you haven't, used it in the last little bit, and likely reminded you of some questions that you might have related to your specific use of the tool. So if you have questions about kind of more detail about how to use it and in general, we'll refer you to the presentation that Nitan did back in the spring. And of course, for anything beyond that, reach out to your TA provider, one of us directly, and we will take a look. We will figure out kind of what might be going on and help you get to a solution. So I do see a question from Tanya, and that was definitely something I wanted to address. So just to make sure that everybody's on the same page and to review kind of the back and forth in the various versions of the tools that have been flying around, we collected from you the current version of the tool that you are using back in late August, early September. And the hope was to get you upgraded to a version of the tool that corrects some, just makes the data a little bit more user friendly, makes it work a little bit better. We ran into a problem with that tool that we've been affectionately terming version 39. And so we've instructed you guys to go back to continue to use the version that you provided to us in late August. And we want to make sure everybody's doing that. If you're unsure about which version you're using right now, or if you're afraid that you moved into that version 39 and we need to go back, reach out to us. We will help you get squared away and help you get situated to make sure that everybody's using the same version. We don't have an update yet on timing of the next version of the tool, but as soon as we're able to get that updated, we will reach out to you all and make sure you have the newest version, and of course be available to help you transfer what you've currently got into the next version. I also see a question from Jose, and thank you, Nitan, for answering in writing. It sounds like either way, if you've got that auto save function that is going to save your tool on whatever network you have it saved on, that's great. If not, nothing to worry about, except an extra reminder to save often and continue to save and save so you don't lose any data. So with that, thank you for your use of the JPEID tool, and do not hesitate to reach out to us if you need any support. And for any of you who have done that recently, and we may be working on a solution for you, thanks for your patience as we figure it all out. So with that, we are going to move on to our final segment of our call, and that is we want to hear a little bit from you guys. So you know, we on the ICF team have been providing TA for reporting to you guys for the last couple of quarters now, and we've been, you know, doing our best to kind of make tweaks to the process and you know, just be available to you as much as possible to help you out with data collection, with JPEID tool, with taking a look at your data, being able to display it in Tableau and talk about it and learn more about how to apply it. So we want to take a moment to just hear from you guys about what's working, what else you might like to receive from us, what kind of additional TA or additional resources you might want or need, in what formats would be most helpful to you. So we've got a couple of prompt questions that I will paste into the chat, but then I'm going to kind of open it up to the group to feel free to chime in, either come off of mute and let us know what you think verbally. Feel free to type into the chat as well. So the questions, just to kind of get you thinking, are, let's see. That didn't come out quite in the right format, but we want to hear what might be working and what you'd like more of that we're doing. What might help improve your experience when it comes to TA around reporting, and what kinds of additional resources might help you with your reporting. So feel free to chime in while you're thinking about those questions and thinking about what your answers might be. I do see a comment from Lachelle about receiving a PDF version of the reports after they're submitted. I know that's something that in the past was available to you guys. That is something, if you want to reach out to us and ask for that directly after you've submitted your reports, we're happy to pull those on an individual basis and provide those to you. I think one thing we want to remind you guys, though, is, you know, you submit your data into SurveyMonkey, and we do a process on our end of reviewing it and QCing it, making sure that, you know, any missing data points are, you know, filled in. We identify any places where there look like there are anomalies in the data, maybe because either just a simple typo or because there was a transition in the person who is providing the data, and there might be a difference in understanding of what the metric means, or just any kind of anomaly in your data over time, and we work with you guys to get those fixed. Anything like that is not going to be reflected in that PDF of your data that you submitted. But once we finish that QC process, the data all goes into Tableau, and our recommendation is that the Tableau dashboard is really the place where you want to access your data. It's sort of the repository. It's where that QC'd and, you know, revised and cleaned up data lives. And so we do want to encourage you to use that as much as possible as your access to where your data is. That said, if you want to reach out to us to request a PDF of the reports, we're happy to do that.
And Laura, if I can just add to that, just to point out to folks, people may be still getting a little bit used to moving around within Tableau, but when you go in there and pull up your individual data, you can produce a PDF of it there. So just to Rock Hill, I hope you don't mind, I just pulled yours up, but because that's what I landed on. But I just want to show folks real quick how you can do that. and Laura, please chime in if you want to advise, differently, etc. But when you're in Tableau, and you pull up your data, this is going into the individual tables, excuse me, up in the kind of the top right corner there, you'll see a place you can click that says download. So you can actually produce like your list of data points, add a Tableau as well. Because, we know it's nice to, you may want to put it in your files, have it, you can pull up right in your hands and look at. So just for your awareness that feature is there in Tableau as well.
Thank you, Lee. That's really helpful, and I'm really glad you mentioned that. One thing we can do is maybe even just write up a quick step-by-step for how to pull that, and we can send that around so that folks know how to do what you just did, Lee. So.
Sorry, I was being slow coming up. Just so y'all, just real quick, here's that button up here. If you hover over it, it'll say download. So hopefully that might be helpful too, might help sort of fill that gap that people, understandably you want to have like a clear record of what you submitted, what was the final version. So just FYI.
Thanks, Lee. Other folks want to chime in about what else you'd like to, other resources you might like to have, other kinds of TA, other formats that would be helpful to you. Okay, I see a note from Sarah about guidance on how the JPEID should be accounted for in public housing software. And yeah, so the example you give, rent without JPEID is 500, but with it, it is 100. So the resident pays 100. How do you notate that within the system so that it doesn't look like they're owing rent? So that's a helpful piece of information, and definitely something we can look into for how to provide that to you. Oh, that's a good question. A pretty detailed JPEID question. So I might send this one over to Nitan. So should the data for all residents be pulled forward using the add month feature before an individual is edited?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish with that, right? Add month is going to copy all of the data from one month to the next as it's currently written. So if you want to copy to the next month the edited data, right? You want to edit and then you want it to be edited for that month and the next month, then I would say go ahead, edit first, then do the add month feature. But if you want the data for that household to stay the same in the current month, but then be edited in the next month, then I would definitely do the add month feature first and then go in and edit. Laura, I see the second part of the question is how to make a change to individual's income. I don't know if it makes sense to present the screen right now or if we should follow up afterwards for that part.
I think in the interest of time, Jason, if it's okay with you, we can follow up directly with you and we can make sure you are clear on how to make the change. So, but thank you for the question, and yeah, we will be in touch. So it sounds like Joshua, thank you for offering some help and support and kind of peer exchange. I think to Sarah and likely others for if they're using that particular software. So thanks for that. Any other thoughts on what kinds of TA you might like to see? I think we have, definitely there are different options for the kinds of format. In terms of TA, we've got these all grantee meetings. We can do small group meetings, if that might be helpful to you and something of interest, whether kind of more of that individual one-on-one consultation, whether there are particular manuals, tools that we can develop for you. Interested in hearing what you all think would be most helpful. JPEID tool office hours for specific questions. Yeah, that I think, given that kind of everybody's situations, everybody's need on the JPEID tool is a little bit different and so specific to your data, definitely something we can explore. And in terms of whether there will be an in-person conference, I'll send that question over to Lee if you have any info on that.
Sure. Thank you for raising that question. It is something we are wanting to bring about. We are kind of working on that here on the HUD side. How we might work with that. There's, as you might imagine, kind of funding and travel considerations at play. So it is something on our list, and we're looking into that. So do stay tuned. And if folks have thoughts, interests, you want to help lead a conference or a summit, just let us know that as well.
All right, thanks, Lee. Yeah. Any other thoughts? What is working for you that we can do more of? That are you feeling is helping with your understanding of your data, with your ability to report? Feel free to share that as well. And this offer to share information about your feedback on reporting TA is open. So if you think of something after this call and you want to just email it to us, feel free to email your HUD grant managers. If you would like to email it to jobsplusreporting@icf.com, you're welcome to do that as well. While we're wrapping up, so I see we have 1 minute left, I'm going to move forward and share. Let me just make sure I'm sharing here. We will mention just some of the resources and some reminders. As we've mentioned, your Q3 2023 data is due October 31st. If you're having any trouble or questions about metrics, reach out to us. As you saw, your data up through Q2 is available in Tableau. So don't just leave it at what we've shown you today. Go in, poke around, learn about what you feel is important that will help you better understand your data and better apply that to your programs. And then links here to 3 Jobs Plus TA calls that we've done in the spring and summer months. Those are all available on the HUD Exchange, and do take a look at those. The slides are also available. And then, of course, you all know Jobs Plus Reporting at icf.com is the best way to reach your assigned TA provider, or one of us, whichever one of us is most available. If one of us is not, there's always somebody else available to address your questions. So with that, I see we're 1 minute over. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for absorbing all of this information. And if you have any feedback or comments to share or questions for any of the folks you heard from today, reach out to us and let us know. With that, we can wrap up, and thank you all and have a great afternoon.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.